Now in terms of expenses, again, the lenders calculate this in their own ways, but they do take into account generally some pretty consistent factors. Are you single or are you in a couple? If you are in a partnership of sorts, is your partner dependent upon you? For example, one of your partner may be looking after the baby and therefore not able to work at the moment. Do you have children? Are your children at school? Do they go to private school? Are they in a university? Do you drive a car? How big is your car? Etc, etc, etc. Now some of those are quite difficult to deal with. You can't take your children back to Maya, okay? Try and get a refund from them to try and reduce your expenses and therefore improve your serviceability. I appreciate that. But in terms of expenses as well, loans and credit cards the banks look at. So again, if you are looking to borrow, be mindful about loans that you might start taking out, personal loans, car loans, etc. Because obviously if you're paying those, it reduces your ability to service the bank's mortgage. Similarly, if you used to be like me, you used to get quite excited when the banks used to write to you and say, great news, your credit card limit's been increased to whatever it might be. Okay, if you're looking to buy loans, I would suggest you be mindful about accepting those credit card limits. Not so concerned about the balance, provided you're not over your balance. More concerned with the limit, because clearly you can spend, or could spend, to that limit. So just be mindful about loans you start taking out and credit card limits that you start accepting. And while we're on this subject, though the banks like for you to have been employed for 12 months, self-employed for 2 years, etc., they generally like you to have stable residency as well. So in terms of not moving jobs, if you are looking to borrow, it's preferable that you don't start to change property every 2 or 3 months or thereabouts. Again, it's not written in tablets of stone. You know, if you have moved within the last 2 years, you know, we can generally find a way around it. But as it is useful to be stable in employment, it's generally useful to be stable in your residency as well. Okay. All right, so we've now worked out how much we can borrow. We've worked out that we can service the loan. What's the right loan for me? Well, as I said, I actually deal with 27 different lenders. I've got access to 400 different mortgages. For me to take you through them, well, you have to lie back and rest because we're going to be here for a few days, clearly. I actually just try and reduce it to 2 simple ones because, I mean, like I said, there's various different options out there. You're fixed and you're variable. Okay? Fixed, as its name suggests, your repayments are fixed irrespective of what happens to the interest rates. Okay? Variable, obviously opposite of that one, as the interest rate changes, so do your repayments. You've probably heard lots of people talk about all of these things: offset accounts, overpayments, redraws. Does the bank have internet access? Does it have branch access? And so on and so forth. Loan features. I might come back to some of those in a second. Okay? But in terms of which loan is best for you, fixed or variable, I would suggest that you take into consideration, first and foremost, the affordability. Because I have a lot of people phone me up saying, I need to have a mortgage deal that's got an offset account to it. And I say, well, that's fine, we can probably sort that out for you. But what I try and encourage everybody doing, particularly if it's your first property, because obviously it's a bit of a different step for you, is to think about your affordability. Can I actually afford to repay the loan? Simple, I know, but let's focus on making sure we get the simple stuff right rather than working on the more complex things. If you're looking at it from an investment perspective, what happens if interest rates went up by 1%? They've gone up by 0.75% in the last 12 months. What happens if they went up by another 1%? Could you afford that? If you're doing renovation work, what happens if your project blew out by 6 months? It took you 6 months longer to do it than you first anticipated. Could you afford those extra repayments? So yeah, we can sit here and talk about offsets and redraws and all of these kind of flash terms. My advice to you, let's make sure we can focus on the affordability to start with. Okay? And the second thing I would say, particularly because you guys are first home buyers predominantly, okay, flexibility. You might get into investment work and think, hang on a second, this was not a good idea. Who knows why? You might buy a property to live in and think, I don't know, I don't want to live here anymore, I want to go travelling. And I don't want to rent it out, I don't want to hassle of worrying about that. So after you've worked out the affordability, I would urge you to consider the flexibility of the loan. If you need to leave, if you need to either end your mortgage by selling your property, for example, or you want to move to a different bank because you're not happy with the interest rate or the service you're getting from this particular lender, be aware of the fact that most lenders will charge you an exit fee. If you want to leave that loan within generally 3 or 4 years of taking it out, most of them will charge you a fee. Any ideas how much?
A couple of grand.
Could well be, exactly that, okay? So in terms of exit fees, some of them aren't particularly expensive, hence why I've said when you're looking about which loan is the right one for you, make sure whoever it is that you're talking to talks to you about these exit fees, because they could be as high as a couple of grand. So you decide that investing is not right for you, you want to go travelling, whatever it might be, you don't want this mortgage anymore. Well, for you to get out of the mortgage, somewhere you've got to find $2,000 from. That's a lot of money. Yeah? And the other thing to think about is portability, particularly those guys who are thinking about investments. Like I say, they'll charge you these fees if you leave within 3 or 4 years. If you're doing renovation work, you buy one, sell it, buy it, sell it, buy it, sell it. Well, then you're going to be in and out of properties maybe every 6 months or every 12 months. Ask them about portability. Can I take the mortgage that you've given me and take it to another property and to another property? So you don't necessarily need to leave the mortgage and not get charged those exit fees. You just take the mortgage with you. And then finally, once you're happy with how this thing works, okay? Once you're happy with the affordability and the flexibility, then I would suggest you might want to think about the features. Overpayment. Can I make additional payments to repay my mortgage quicker? Redraw. Can I take that money back out again if I need to? Okay? Offset. Basically the same thing. It allows you to overpay and redraw the money, but in a slightly more flexible way. Okay? What else do I have up there? How important is it for you to be able to walk into the branch to discuss your mortgage? Is that important to you? If it is, then you need to be looking at one of the big 4 or 5. If it isn't, then you can look at the others. Okay? Internet access, is that important to you? Yeah. Payment frequency. Do the banks allow you to pay weekly, fortnightly or monthly? Some do, some don't. Okay? But my advice again, affordability, flexibility, and then the features, probably in that particular order.